Hi, this is Joan. Welcome to my channel, Just Wanna Craft. In this video, I have 5 farmhouse style DIY crafts. So I'm gonna get started. This first craft, I have this riser that I found at the Dollar Tree. I didn't like the sticker on the top. I started out trying to peel it off. It wasn't coming for me very well at all. So I went to my sanding block. You can see on the edges the amount I was able to get off. And then I just started sanding it. Then I took a baby wipe to get off all that dust from the sanding. These little jewels or gems came from a sheet from Walmart, and I've seen something very similar at the Dollar Tree. They come on a line, a clear plastic line, and they're sticky. So I'm just putting those all around the outside. And then I'm going to paint with this is Waverly's white chalk paint. And I am going to do 2 coats of this. So you can see from the sanding, I just made the sticker a little bit lighter so that my paint covered better. And I did 2 coats to get a nice full coverage on that. Then I found this stencil at Hobby Lobby, and so I just tried to center it on the middle using the middle point there, and I taped the top and the bottom down to help hold it in place for me. I wanted a really nice, just light gray for this, so I just mixed some white acrylic paint with a little bit of black. I used my brush to put it on this little sponge stamper, so I didn't get too much. And then I'm just lightly going over all of the stamp, kind of lifted it up to see how I was doing. So just stamping, making sure I'm going up and down. And then when I took it off, there was one area that was a little bit darker than the rest. So I'll fix that in a minute. But then I did take that stamper again and went around the little jewels around the outside. I switched over to my finger because the sponge stamper thing wasn't doing the best for me. And then I went along the edge just a little bit on the top. There, I'm just touching up some of my paint that I got from the stencil up at the top. So here's where I'm fixing that one spot. I took a little bit of white and just went over that again. To seal my riser, I am just using a coat of the regular matte Mod Podge, just on the top and all around the side. And that finishes my riser. There it is, just plain without anything on it. I wanted you to be able to see the design. And here it is with a little vase of flowers. Moving on to my next craft, I found this mirror. There are certain different number of styles at the Dollar Tree. I picked up this one. I tried, the back did not come off. So I tried using a little pliers to get my mirror out and it just broke my mirror. But that was okay because I'm not using it for this project. So I then did a coat of the white chalk paint. This is going to be a primer for me because I'm going to end up painting it a blue color. But I started off with a sponge brush and then switched to a smaller brush to get into all those little crevices on the design. This is the paper I'm going to fill in the middle where the mirror was. So I used my broken mirror to try and get the correct size. So I just lined up where it looked correct. And it was pretty close. I did have to trim it a little bit. So I cut that out. And I'm going to try to match the blue in that paper. So I took it a blue and I added a little bit of white and black to make it a little bit more grayish, and this is the color I ended up with. And now to add in some detail, I am mixing first a gray color and then I'm taking that blue, and it's one of the Waverly chalk paints, and I'm adding that in to make my gray a little bluish. And I'm going to use my finger and go over the raised edges on this design to bring out some of the detail. I also did it along the top, and then I went in with my paintbrush to get in a little bit more detail in the inside of those parts where it went, the crevices. Then I decided to add antique wax. So similar to what I did with the grayish blue color, I am just going over a little bit less though and adding in that antique wax. Then I wiped it down with a baby wipe to lighten it up. On my computer, I printed out some different size S's so I could see which one I liked the best. I wanted the paint look, so I wasn't going to do vinyl. This is a little method to get my S on there. So I put the pencil all along the back, and now I'm tracing it, and that's going to leave a light line for me onto the paper. So I pushed pretty hard, and you can't really pick it up on the camera, but there was a light line on there that I'm now going to trace darker. And at one point in the S, I couldn't see very well, so I put my printed out S right next to there so I could kind of copy the same shape. Now I'm going to mix up some more of that blue, and I took a really dark gray to get my color that I'm going to fill in with my S. I took a really tiny paintbrush that was really fine so that I could get right along the edge and just used really short brush strokes to try and get me a nice crisp line. And there is my painted in S. I erased those extra pencil mark lines around the outside. And then I'm going to take the antique wax, and I first started by going over my S, distressing it a little bit, and then I also did some on the paper. Now I am going to cover this with a coat of Mod Podge so my paint doesn't chip off that kind of plasticky material of the mirror. And for my letter S on this piece of paper, I am using the glossy Mod Podge. On the other one, I just used matte. And then I'm going to use Mod Podge to glue that into the center. And here is how it looks hanging up on my wall. I really like that color blue. I'm very happy with how it turned out. Next, I had this mirror from the Dollar Tree and the glass part got broken. So my plan here is to repurpose this. The back got a little broken too, but I just used some hot glue and to help hold that back together. So here I am taking the chalk paint and I'm going to do two coats around the frame of the mirror. I'm sorry, frame of the picture frame. And to fill in the back where the glass was, I am using these jumbo craft sticks that I picked up from Walmart. And I'm going to use 4 of them. 4 fit perfectly. And so I'm cutting them down to the size of the frame. And there's all 4. I'm going to do these also in that white chalk paint. And here I am doing my second coat on the frame. I also painted the back because of where the slits are for my wood stick pieces, so that white will show through if there's any extra space. Now I'm taking the antique wax and I'm going to go around the outside and cover up that nice raised design on the mirror. So again, I'm taking my finger. I generally use my finger when I use this antique wax. And now I am going to use wood glue to attach these sticks. Oh, and I used a little hot glue too for the faster hold to the cardboard piece that was the back of the frame. Here I'm just touching up at doing all these steps. Sometimes made my white pieces a little smudged. And then I'm going to cover that with Mod Podge once it's dry. And I'm also going to cover the frame to prevent any chipping. So I'm putting that back inside the frame now, and my plan here with this is now to add a nice finishing touch to add in the jute cord around the outside. So I'm using hot glue for this, just going a little section at a time, placing it around the inside. For my corners, I use my little tool there to get just a tiny little bit of hot glue and get it in the corner, and then I use that same tool to push it right into the corner. And then at the end, I just cut it off and again use the little dab of glue on that tool to get the corner nice and tight. These clips came from Hobby Lobby. They were pretty inexpensive for a large pack. And so here I'm just measuring to find my center. I'm going to put it right up along the top. To hold this down, since this is going to hold a picture, I am going to use E6000 for that more secure hold. So once I had that glued on, I had a little bit extra that came off. I wiped it down. I found that little pencil mark that I had made and tried to make that right in the center of the hole in the top of the clip. So here it is with a picture. That's a picture of my firstborn son. I also thought it might be neat to use this in the kitchen to display or hold a recipe card, as this recipe comes from my grandma who passed away a number of years ago. Next, I picked up that box from Dollar Tree, and I am going to make that into a window box with a window behind it. So I'm taking, again, these jumbo, actually I think they're giant craft sticks from Walmart, and I cut off the rounded edge on two of them. And now I'm measuring my distance there for my top piece. And I'm going to cut that down to go in between the two pieces, side pieces. I decided this project evolved as I was completing it. I first had a top piece, and you can see I'd already painted the pieces white, but then I decided to change up the top, and I'm making two smaller squares. And I'm going to put these stickers, these came from the Dollar Tree also, and I am taking this sticker, and I have it from two different packs. So I had two of them, and I'm going to put them on the top on the ends. So after I have that on, I'm going to paint that in chalk paint. And it took two coats to cover that sticker fully. And like I said, this evolved, and I had to figure out the best way to construct this. I started with wood glue. That was not strong enough, but here I'm trying to cover up the seams with my white paint. So then I switched over to E6000, and for some reason I didn't film it, but I did go over the back and I used the white E6000. I went over those seams on the back, and that seemed to hold it really well. So this is a little wooden dowel, or I'm sorry, those are actually skewers, not dowels. They're little bit thinner. And I cut one down for my middle piece on my window. And then I am taking my blade and I'm cutting out a little notch in the back so that it will fit behind that piece so it lays a little bit flatter. So I just kind of went on each side and cut it out and then laid it down to see if it fit. And once it fit nicely there, I marked, making sure I had enough hangover on each side to be able to glue it on the back. And then I cut those down. Then I'm going to paint them white to match the rest of the pieces. And here you can see I did film putting the E6000 on, just put a dab on each side and let that fully dry before moving on to my next step. And I lined up my ruler there to make sure my pieces were evenly spaced. Then I am going to attach the side pieces to what's going to be the window box, also with E6000, and I put masking tape down to help hold that as it dried. Now I'm going to distress my window. So I'm using a gray color. I just mixed some white and black. And I'm going to use my finger to put this on. I just went around. They started with the box, went around each side, And then also did the window, just going up and down, making strokes. Sometimes I got it a little bit too dark, so I went back over it with my white, tried to smooth it out. Once that was done for my window box, I am going to take some of this foam and I cut it down short enough so that it would not show through on the sides with those handles. These came from Hobby Lobby and I picked up two of them. There was a little wire attaching them all together, so I just unclipped that. There were four of these pieces on each, so I did four on each side. Just tried to fluff them out as much as I could. Then I went in with a darker of the same type of plant. I believe I picked that up at Walmart to help fill in my box. And then I have these white flowers or creamish flowers that came from Michael's. And I'm going to just cut them off and place them around. To finish this, I'm going to put moss. I put it all along the edge or the outside of the box, and then to fill in anywhere in the middle where it might have shown, and also on the side where that handle was. There's my finished window box. Took a bit of work to figure it out, but I figured it out and I'm really happy with the way it looks. Moving on, using these sticks again, I am going to be making some barn doors. So I'm starting by cutting off all of the rounded edges, and then I traced over to make sure they were all the same length. So my barn door is going to be 5 sticks wide, and I needed to have these held together while I did my measurements. So I just, before I painted them, I held it together with masking tape. So now I'm going to lay one over each side of the barn door. So then I'm taping those down. Now I'm going to measure my top piece, holding it in there. I am definitely not a builder. I did not do any exact measurements, and there were a little bit of gaps at the end, but that's okay with me. It might drive some other people a little crazy, but that's how I did it. So again, I just am going to hold it in there to measure out my bottom and middle piece. And there I'm using my ruler to find the exact middle. And next I'm going to do the angled pieces. Once I have that taped down nicely, I'm again just holding it there and making a little pencil mark where I need to cut it. And cut it down with my razor blade. And I did, as you saw in some of the other steps, I did sand these down after making my cuts. If it was a little too tight, I just cut off a little extra, like right here. And also some other areas I was just able to sand it down a little bit more to get a nice tight fit. To make my bottom, I traced it and traced the top one and cut it out and then had it go the other direction. So there are my two barn doors. I repeated the step to make one of each. I am going to now take this apart, but I'm going to label everything so I remember exactly how to put it back together. So I put numbers on the back of those and then labeled for right side and left side, and then top, middle, and bottom for the pieces that went horizontal. Then I am going to do a coat of the chalk paint on each of my pieces. To reassemble this, I am going to use tape to help hold it. And I'm going to use wood glue to put these all down. So I started with my sides and then my middle pieces, top, middle, and bottom. What I didn't account for was that the paint would take up more space, so I did have to sand these down to help them fit better. Then I put a bunch of heavy books on top to help hold that as I let it dry. Here I cut down a piece to get my sides to hold on the back. I cut another one of those sticks in half and just glued that onto the back. And I kept the tape on there while it was drying to help hold it in place. And then again, I'm going to put the heavy books on and let that dry. Next, I am mixing together more gray, and then there you can see I had a little piece of paper towel and I squirted some water in there to help thin it down. And I'm going to take this gray and put it all over the top of my barn doors. So my process for this was I put it on with my finger, and then I took that wet piece of paper towel and went over it to help smooth it out. Once I had those the way I liked, I am making some hinges and a handle. I'm taking some extra pieces of those craft sticks, and I first made one, and then I used that and traced it. So I'm doing 3 of the hinges on each door, cutting that down, and then to help me round it, I used my sanding block. For the handle, I used just a regular popsicle stick and cut that. And then I just totally used my sanding block to make those rounded. Didn't even bother cutting it with the razor. The sanding block worked really well to make those the amount of roundness that I wanted. Then I'm going to paint those all in black, all of my little hinges and the handles. And once those were totally dry, I sanded them down to give them that distressed look. I did the edges first, and then I went over pretty much the whole top of the piece. And lastly, I am going to glue all those down with some more wood glue. I'm going to use my ruler just to make sure they're lined up. Here are how my finished barn doors turned out. I think it'd be fun to put a little wreath on them for the different seasons. That is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these crafts.